Hello, and welcome to a digital presentation of our program series, Cooking Up History. We're thrilled to share this recipe and conversation with Chef Jocelyn Ramirez, founder of Todo Verde, a plant-based chef, college professor, yoga instructor, and advocate for healthy food access in her community. If you'd like to cook along with Chef Jocelyn in the recipe for Las Tres Hermanas in Chipotle, it will be available on this page, as well as in the resource section of our website. We welcome you to share your dishes with us using the hashtag Smithsonian Food.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So I wanted to start off by asking you, Jocelyn, what are we going to make today, and how does that tie into your story of food justice?
Yes, so today we're going to be making a Las Hermanas salad, or a Three Sisters salad, and it's a recipe that's really near and dear to me because I think it really honors the indigenous communities of this land and throughout the United States and Mexico, who have really cultivated this dish and the way that these ingredients are grown. And the Three Sisters essentially are beans, corn, and squash. And they're a permaculture of ingredients that are typically grown together because something like corn really pulls nitrogen out of the soil, and beans do their role in bringing nitrogen back into the soil. And so, you know, they all really work harmoniously together. And because of that, they're also used as the three ingredients in Three Sisters salad, soup, saute, whatever it may be. This dish is really unique in that it can go in any direction. It could be boiling the ingredients, fire roasting them, sauteing them, roasting them in the oven. It can really go anywhere. And so with this recipe that we're doing today, I also wanted to be able to include a nice amount of flavor profiles, of robust flavor profiles, such as dried oregano, chipotle en adobo, fresh lemon juice, cilantro, and of course, our beans, corn, and squash.
That's awesome. I actually wanted to talk a little bit more about food justice. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think our Latinx communities are more likely to live in a food apartheid and have chronic illnesses be commonplace in our households? I'm curious to know how Todo Verde has brought awareness to these issues to Latinx communities in Los Angeles.
I think that the work that we have been trying to do is really to continue to have conversations about why food is not equitable across the board in a city like Los Angeles and others, why we see food deserts and food apartheid happening, and really how we need to change policies to make sure that everyone has access to healthy food. And in turn, this will trickle down to our health, right? Because we see a lot of low-income Black and Brown communities dealing with preventable diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, cancer, thyroid disease. And these are issues that my immediate family has dealt with, let alone, you know, extended family, neighborhoods, communities. And so I think it's really important for us to feel like we shouldn't have shame around the things that we're dealing with, that we should continue to have conversations and be more open with where our health is so that we can figure out ways to change the system. And that means having access to land to grow our own food, making sure that the grocery stores, the few grocery stores that we have here on this side of town as compared to the west side of town, I currently live on the east side, that is also an area that changes because we have many more residents on the east side and South LA communities of Los Angeles, and much fewer grocery stores than you would see on the west side of Los Angeles, which is a more affluent neighborhood. And so we really need to be able to create shifts in our system where we see people taking ownership of the food that they have accessible to them and taking ownership of their health in a way that is much more powerful than what we are seeing right now. And the neighborhood that I grew up in Southeast Los Angeles, when you drive around that neighborhood, you predominantly see liquor stores, fast food chains, little corner stores. That is more readily accessible and available to people in that neighborhood than you would see, for example, a health food store. And that means that we are losing touch with some of these native ingredients that are now being sold as quote unquote superfoods, when in fact they were ingredients that people in our native community have consumed and used as medicine essentially for generations and generations. And I'm talking about really simple ingredients like chia, amaranth, cacao, maca, and many others. I'm going to get started with the recipe now. We're going to be making our tres hermanas or las hermanas salad. And I love the squash in this recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and start roasting the corn. I've turned on a burner to about medium-high heat. And I'm just going to grab my corn on the cob, and I'm going to allow my corn to start roasting. You can see that I've already started that process for, here I have some corn, some jalapeno, and a squash that I've just sliced into about 1/4-inch slices. So fire roast them both sides. And I really love the process of fire roasting corn because there's something really nostalgic about it. Ooh, and it just popped on me. Really nostalgic about it, in that it reminds me of being in Mexico with my family and starting up a fire and roasting corn and getting all of our food and ingredients together, making salsa, and just making a feast out of what we had readily available for us directly from the land.
And I also wanted to ask you a question, kind of similar, more particularly to cities. And so when I have lived in large cities that have been heavily gentrified, similar to Los Angeles, plant-based options, especially foods I grew up eating that I thought I could never eat again, have been easy to find. Whereas when I returned to my hometown, which has seen very little gentrification, plant-based options are not as available. From your experiences of growing up in Los Angeles and seeing the Latinx and other communities being displaced, do you think there is an urban elitism embedded in the effort to go plant-based? How is that tied to gentrification?
When people think about plant-based, they definitely do assume, in my community, for example, at least when I first did the plant-based journey, that you're doing something that's kind of against the grain, that's against the culture, by deciding to eat in a different way. And what you most commonly hear is like, oh, that's what white folks eat. If you want to eat plant-based, that's what white folks do. That's not what people in our community do. And, with the question of gentrification, you absolutely do see an accessibility and available to more plant-based foods in a way that you wouldn't in a low-income neighborhood, mostly because, there's not going to be some, venture capitalist or this investor or something coming into that neighborhood. The community deserves to have healthy foods available to them, or they will want to eat something like this in this community, so I should trade it. But it typically happens more in communities that are already facing gentrification, because there is monetary means to do so, in that the people who are moving in have more financial accessibility to be able to purchase some of these ingredients that I mentioned that are now being sold to us as a luxury versus an everyday staple. And so it's really, really complicated. I think that, I, as somebody who works in the food industry, firmly believe that food should be slightly more expensive when people do choose to eat out somewhere, that, it should be affordable, but that it shouldn't be cheap food, because one, you're not honoring all the people who are playing a role in that plate of food coming to you. And I'm not just talking about the people who work on my team, for example, who deserve a living wage, but rather all the people down the line, all the way from the farmers who are growing and harvesting this food. And so everybody deserves to earn a living wage in that process, but ultimately that comes back to the consumer and the price they pay to have a prepared meal done for them or made for them. And so I go back and forth in that. Yes, food should be accessible. Absolutely. Healthy food should be accessible. But what does that mean for the bottom line? And you see the government providing subsidies for industries such as, corn, which goes to the meat industry, and so on and so forth. And so I think that there could be some sort of assistance in that sense, where people can be able to pay a living wage or a fair wage or amount for the food that they're eating, and yet still have it feel like it's accessible and available to them.
So I know that you mentioned earlier from the previous question about how, people, in our communities usually say, oh, like that's, usually white people food. Do you mostly hear that from the older folks, or like there is no age difference? Because I'm curious to know if, if these trends to go plant-based have created a generational divide.
Yes, I think that there is definitely a little bit of this generational divide. I think that there is a younger generation who is becoming more knowledgeable on what's happening in the world that we live in and in the systems that we live in, rather than, our parents who, for example, my parents migrated here from Mexico and Ecuador and, worked really hard to get to where they're at and to this point. And in that process of coming to the United States, there was definitely this idea of we have to assimilate and we want to fit in and we want to feel like we're a part of the American culture. And, that means that you leave a little bit of what your original culture is and you make way for something a little bit different and new. And so I think that there is definitely a generational divide in that, for example, my parents and the way that we grew up, because they grew up in extreme poverty, to then come to the U.S. and have a little bit more economic stability and being able to purchase on a more regular basis meat products, which where they're from is an extreme luxury, felt luxurious. It felt like they had come here and they made it. And that's how the culture shifts. And now to have this younger generation, like myself and people younger than me, say, hey, actually, I understand that, but I don't want it. I still want to eat plant-based. I want to go back to the way your parents were eating, right? Like this generation's grandparents. We don't want to be so consumed in this American culture. We don't want to assimilate. We want to really stay true to our roots. And so, when I left my higher education job, which was a stable job with benefits that my mom was really proud of, to cook my abuelita's recipes for a living, she was really skeptical and downright upset about it. And now, after seeing how well received it has been by the community of mostly younger Latinx community members, she's now a firm believer in that, wow, this is actually really impactful and it matters to people and it's important. We should have these conversations. And I understand now this notion of why it's important to think about plant-based, because it does really affect our health. And I think that that's why the conversations need to continue to happen. And these conversations need to happen also within this intergenerational community, so that we can kind of find the in-between, whatever that means for each individual household and family. So I'm going to start chopping up some of these veggies that I've been fire roasting, starting with my corn. So I have this beautiful fire roasted corn that I'm just going to cut off the cob and bring into a bowl.
So I wanted to ask you, why was it important to create this cookbook? What do you hope the legacy of your recipes will carry?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really important to create the cookbook for several reasons. First reason being that I think that our stories and our traditions are just as important as all the other, traditional cookbooks that you see out there. And, I thought it was a good opportunity for me to be able to share my abuelita's, food knowledge, to be able to share that ancestral knowledge. When I looked up online to see if there were any plant-based Mexican books out there early on when I decided to go plant-based, believe believe it or not, the majority of those books are not written by Mexican community members. They're actually written by white folks. And so I thought it was really important for me to take up space in that arena, in that category, and to share, the real life stories of, these are recipes that have been passed down from generation to generation within my family. I have grown up eating this family. I am indeed, culture. And then to also honor what this means for my family. My abuelita has passed on from this life, but, I like to think that she would have never imagined that her recipes would be featured in this way, and that there would potentially be people from all over the world making these recipes and really enjoying it and making it with their family and finding a sense of nostalgia in it. So I think that that's really important for us to create these types of spaces for us who aren't often represented as people of color in an industry, in a media industry, such as authoring cookbooks. And really the last reason is, I have a small business here in Los Angeles. I have Todo, Verde. And, obviously I'm on a mission here to be able to create more plant-based food and recipes for my community. But, if I'm thinking about more big picture, for me, I want it to go much further than Los Angeles. I want people from anywhere in the world to be able to pick up this book and find the ingredients, make this food, so that it doesn't really rely on me, on Jocelyn, cooking somewhere and giving you a plate of food, but then this food can find its way to your home and become a part of your lifestyle on a regular basis. So I think that that's really the true way to try to encourage others to embrace this plant-based life. These recipes, I do not intend to keep secret. I want more and more people to have access to them so that they feel like it's not that complicated. I could do this and I can still eat really, really delicious food. So the salad is in the works here. I have my corn cut off the cob. I have my squash that's all diced up, and I minced up my fire roasted jalapeno. And you can see that it's slowly starting to come together. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to add in the remainder of my ingredients just to get it all coated in the really delicious chipotle lemon olive oil dressing. And I love this dish because you can eat it as a salad. You can eat it with chips. You can do so much with it. And we're going to, of course, add our beans to this beautiful salad. I have some black beans that I'm just going to toss into my bowl. And I'm going to just very gently fold all these ingredients together before I start mixing in everything that's going to season them even more, make it a really delicious dish. And I'm going to add here some lemon juice. I have some freshly squeezed lemon juice that's going to give it a nice bright note, especially because we fire roasted so much. And so that brings kind of all that flavor element kind of on this like low grounded, flavor profile. And the lemon just really brightens it up. Of course, I'm going to add some chipotle en adobo. And I have about a tablespoon here of my chipotle. And I'm going to add some olive oil to this to just really bring it all together. This is an optional ingredient, but I really love the way that it just pulls the entire dish together. I'm going to season it with a little bit of dry cumin, just a pinch of dry cumin, a pinch of chili flake, and a little bit of freshly ground black pepper and some oregano. And that oregano I like to keep whole. It's dried oregano, but I like to keep it whole just because I love to see the leaves of oregano in there. And the last bit that I'll add in there is a half a bunch of minced cilantro that I've already minced up here. And all I have to do is give this a nice couple pinches of salt, and I should be good to go. And I just love how this dish really comes together. It's so beautiful with the different colors in it, with all the notes of earthiness, of lightness, of groundedness. It's definitely one that our ancestors did not mess up on. They did such a great job and really thinking through something that and now I like to think about who was the first person who thought to grow beans, corn, and squash together. They did just an awesome job of figuring out this permaculture and making delicious food even more delicious. All right, and I'm going to just plate this up with a little bit of tortilla chips that I have here and a nice bowl that I have here. And this is ready to eat.
So one final question I have for you, Jocelyn, is looking to the future of food justice, what are some of the things that community members can do to support a more equitable, accessible food system?
In terms of thinking about food equity, I think that it's really important for folks to get involved with their local cities, food policy councils, to get together with people and figure out what are some of the main issues of people not food available in their neighborhoods and why, and what we can do to change it. And I think that we all have the power to make a change happen with our everyday actions. So a lot of times people think, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. What you could do now is think about, your everyday dollars and where you spend them. Do you go to a farmer's market and support the local vendors there and the farmers there rather than go to the grocery store and purchasing your produce there? Do you support the small businesses in your neighborhood that you want to see survive the test of time, especially during, an economic crisis like the one we're facing now? So, you really do have the opportunity to choose what you want to thrive and what you don't. And you can do that through the food that you purchase, through the businesses that you support, through what you nourish your body with, what you put topically on your body, all of the things, and how you connect to the land. And so it could be really simple. Sometimes it seems like it could be overly complicated because we may be so far from there. And I'm one to tell you that, it's taken a long time for me to get to the point where I'm fully plant-based now, where I'm able to even grow some of my food, where I'm really conscious about where I'm buying my food and why. It's all baby steps, and it's continuously checking in and being thoughtful about it, and always knowing that you're continuing on that path rather than thinking, well, it's just easier to do it this other way. Challenge yourself to do what you know is just and what is right for not just yourself, but for all the people who are affected in every decision that we make as people, as a community every single day.
Thank you for sharing that, Jocelyn. And thank you for the presentation. It makes a lot more sense about how to make this recipe now that I've physically seen it. I'm actually really bad at cooking, so this has been really helpful. So I want to thank you to Chef Jocelyn for joining us today. And as a reminder, to view this recipe or any other of our other recipes from this year's Food History Weekend, visit the Resources tab on our website. Thank you.